The camera doesn't usually catch the real Lewis Hamilton. The calm press conference answers, the diplomatic quotes, that's the version we normally see. But right after crossing the finish line in Hungary, something slipped through. A raw, unfiltered radio message that showed exactly what's been building up inside a 7-time world champion for weeks. And once you hear what he actually said, and see the full pattern behind it, you'll understand why this moment has the entire paddock talking. Let's start with the outburst itself. The second Hamilton crossed the line in Budapest, he keyed his radio and let it out to his own pit wall, venting that every single opportunity he gives the stewards, they hand him a penalty. Not a calculated soundbite. Not something crafted for cameras. Just pure, in-the-moment frustration from a driver who felt like he'd hit a wall he couldn't control. That single sentence tells you more about where Hamilton's head is right now than any post-race interview could. To understand why he reached that point, you need to see the full run of bad luck he's been living through. Hungary was Hamilton's 4th penalty in just 3 race weekends. It started at Silverstone, a 5-second penalty for a false start, one he later contested and actually got the FIA to admit had been harsh. Then Spa added another 5-second penalty, this time tied to a collision involving George Russell. And Hungary alone delivered 2 separate hits, a 3-place grid penalty for impeding Oscar Piastri in qualifying, and then, just to make the weekend even worse, a 5-second penalty during the race itself for a pit lane speeding violation. Here's the detail that turns frustration into something closer to disbelief. The pit lane limit in Budapest was set at exactly 80 kilometers per hour. FIA documentation released after the race confirmed Hamilton was clocked at 80.1, 1/10 of a kilometer per hour over the limit. That is a margin so microscopic it's barely measurable by a human being sitting in a moving car, let alone something a driver could consciously control lap after lap. And this wasn't even a first offense. Earlier this season at Monaco, Hamilton was hit with the exact same penalty, for the exact same razor-thin margin, 1/10 of a kilometer per hour. Now think about what it actually feels like to be the driver in that seat. You're managing tire wear, brake temperatures, battery deployment, race strategy, and a dozen other variables in real time, at speeds most people can't comprehend, and somewhere in the middle of all that, a fraction of a kilometer per hour becomes the difference between a clean race and a costly time penalty. That's the reality Hamilton was reacting to when he vented on that radio message, and it's a reality that's repeated itself across 4 separate weekends now. What makes Hamilton's frustration genuinely credible, rather than just a driver complaining about losing, is that he hasn't tried to claim every penalty was unfair. When it came to the impeding incident with Piastri, Hamilton did the opposite of deflecting. He openly admitted he should have checked his mirrors, calling it a communication error on his own side, and took responsibility without excuses. That matters, because it shows this isn't a driver who thinks he's above the rules. It's a driver who accepts fair penalties, and is specifically, pointedly frustrated by the ones that come down to margins no one could realistically avoid. That frustration didn't stop at the radio message either. After his qualifying grid penalty was confirmed, Hamilton posted on social media, writing that sometimes you just can't catch a break, describing a weekend where he'd felt genuinely strong in every session, only to watch it fall apart in the final moments. Going from second on the grid to 5th because of a single penalty ruling is the kind of swing that can quietly decide a championship over the course of a season, and Hamilton knows that better than almost anyone on the grid. So what does this radio outburst actually tell us? It tells us that beneath the composed exterior Hamilton usually presents to the world, there's real, mounting frustration about a pattern he feels powerless to stop. For penalties in 3 weekends isn't bad luck anymore at that frequency. It's something he's now forced to factor into every single session, every outlap, every pit stop, wondering if the smallest miscalculation is going to cost him again. Heading into the second half of the season, the question isn't really whether Hamilton broke the rules. The documentation confirms he did, every single time, even if only by fractions. The real question is what this is doing to him mentally, race after race, and whether a driver this experienced can keep absorbing penalties this marginal without it affecting his performance or his relationship with the sport's governing body going forward. Let me know in the comments. Did Hamilton's reaction seem justified to you, or is he simply feeling the pressure of racing on the edge of the rules? Subscribe for more, because if this pattern continues, Hamilton's frustration on that radio message might just be the beginning.